You ran a pilot project. The results were strong. Coverage went up. Quality improved. The data backed everything you said it would. Your donor was satisfied. Your report was positive. And then you tried to scale it up, and it stalled. Maybe funding ran out before government could absorb it. Maybe the supervision system that made the pilot work couldn't be replicated across hundreds of facilities. Maybe the staff who drove the results moved on. Maybe the government simply wasn't ready or wasn't convinced. Whatever the specific reason, the pattern is the same. A successful pilot, a failed scale-up, and a question nobody seems to have a clear answer to. Why? I want to give you that answer today. And it comes from a set of 12 recommendations developed by ExpandNet and the World Health Organization in a document called Beginning with the End in Mind, or BWIM, as practitioners in the scaling up field know it. This is episode 1 of our series on the ExpandNet and WHO's systematic approach to scaling up. My name is Femi Kwate. I am a public health consultant and ExpandNet affiliate based in Nigeria. I have spent the last several years applying this framework to family planning and reproductive health programs across Nigerian states. And in this series, I want to teach you what this framework actually means in practice. Not the academic version, but the version that works in a busy government health system with real resource constraints, real political dynamics, and real implementation challenges. Let's get into it. Governments around the world have grown weary of pilot projects. That is not my opinion. It is a documented pattern in the public health literature. Hundreds of pilot projects in reproductive health, family planning, and primary health care have demonstrated impressive results at small scale. Most of them never went further. Why? The ExpandNet and WHO framework gives us a precise answer. Pilot projects tend to fail to scale for one fundamental reason. They are designed to succeed, not to scale. And those two things are not the same. Think about what a well-resourced pilot looks like. Dedicated project staff, often with higher motivation and skill than routine system staff. Intensive supervision that cannot be replicated at scale. Additional inputs, training commodities, monitoring tools, funded by a project budget that disappears the moment the pilot ends. A service delivery model that works beautifully in 3 carefully selected facilities, but has never been tested in the kind of overcrowded district hospital or understaffed primary healthcare center where most of your target population actually seeks care. Pilots require special resources and support during testing that subsequently cannot be replicated on a larger scale. And there has been a tendency to set up parallel structures, running alongside the existing health system rather than inside it, which means the system never actually learns to deliver the intervention. The moment the project closes, the parallel structure collapses, and the system is no different from how you found it. This is the pilot conundrum. Pilots that are designed purely as proof of concept studies produce evidence. What they often do not produce is proof of implementation, proof that the intervention can work within the real system, with the real staff, under real operating conditions and resource constraints. Beginning with the end in mind is ExpandNet's response to this conundrum. BWIM is a set of 12 recommendations for how to design pilot projects with scaling up in mind. It is not a framework in its own right. It is a practical guidance tool, one of several produced by ExpandNet and WHO that sits at the very beginning of the scaling up process. The core premise is simple. If you intend to scale up, you should begin with the end in mind. The decisions you make when you are designing and implementing your pilot will either open the door to scale up or close it, often before you ever get to the stage of writing a scaling strategy. This is counterintuitive for many program managers and implementing partners. The instinct is to focus on making the pilot work first and worry about scale later. But BWIM argues, and the evidence supports, that the two cannot be separated. The design choices you make in year 1 of your pilot will shape what is possible in year 5 of your implementation. Let me say that again. The design choices you make in year 1 of your pilot will shape what is possible in year 5 of your implementation. BWIM gives you 12 specific areas to address during pilot design and implementation to maximize the likelihood that your intervention can eventually be taken to scale. Each recommendation addresses a different determinant of scaling up success, a different reason why pilots typically fail to expand. Together, they form a system for building scalability into your intervention from the very beginning. I am going to give you an overview of all 12 recommendations now. Each one will get its own dedicated episode in this series. But I want you to see the full picture first, because the power of BWIM is not in any single recommendation. It is in how they work together. The first cluster is about context and relevance. Recommendation 1. Engage in a participatory process involving key stakeholders, and not just any stakeholders, but the people and institutions who will be responsible for delivering and sustaining the intervention at scale. If they are not in the room when you are designing the pilot, you are designing without them. Recommendation 2. Ensure the relevance and feasibility of the proposed innovation. Is this intervention actually solving a priority problem in this context? Can the system that will eventually deliver it at scale actually absorb it? Recommendation 3. Reach consensus on expectations for scale up. Before you begin, everyone involved, implementers, government, and donors, needs to agree on what success at scale actually looks like and on a realistic timeline for getting there. The second cluster is about design for real-world conditions. Recommendation 4. Tailor the innovation to the socio-cultural and institutional settings where it will be scaled up. Test it in conditions that resemble scale, not in your best facility, but in the kind of facility your target population actually uses. Recommendation 5. Keep the innovation as simple as possible. Every component you add is a component that can break, a component that requires training, a component that adds cost. Complexity is the enemy of scale. If it cannot be delivered by a community health worker in a high workload setting, it is not ready for scale. Recommendation 6. Test the innovation in the variety of sociocultural and institutional settings where it will be scaled up. If you are designing for national scale in a country as diverse as Nigeria, one pilot site in one state is not enough evidence. Recommendation 7. Test the innovation under routine operating conditions and existing resource constraints of the health system, not with project resources, not with dedicated project staff, with what the system has. The third cluster is about building the evidence base and sustainability from day one. Recommendation 8. Develop plans to assess and document the process of implementation. You need to know not just whether the intervention works, but how it was implemented, what enabled it, and what got in the way. That documentation is what allows others to replicate it. Recommendation 9. Advocate with donors and other sources of funding for financial support beyond the pilot stage. If your donor cycle ends when the pilot ends and there is no transition plan for government financing, you have built a dependency, not a program. Recommendation 10. Prepare to advocate for necessary changes in policies, regulations, and other health systems components. Sustainable scale-up requires institutionalization, embedding the intervention into policies, training curricula, supply chains, and budgets. That process takes years and must start early. Recommendation 11. Develop plans to promote learning and disseminate information. The evidence from your pilot needs to reach decision makers, other implementing partners, and government officials, not just sit in a final report. And the 12th recommendation stands alone. Recommendation 12. Plan on being cautious about initiating scale-up before the required evidence is available. This is perhaps the most difficult recommendation to follow, because the pressure to scale up before the evidence is ready is enormous. From donors, from government, from communities. But premature scale-up is one of the most common ways that promising interventions fail. Get the evidence first, then scale. After all 12 recommendations, one system, applied together. I want to be honest about something. The 12 recommendations of BWIM are individually not surprising. Many of them will seem obvious when you read them. Of course, you should involve stakeholders. Of course, you should design for the real context. Of course, sustainability needs to be planned. But while seemingly self-evident, taken together, these recommendations represent a departure from prevailing approaches to project design and implementation. The fact is that most pilot projects do not apply them systematically. Some apply one or two. Very few apply all 12 together from the beginning. That gap between knowing the recommendations and actually applying them as a system is where most pilot projects lose the possibility of scale. If you are a program manager designing a new intervention, BWIM gives you a structured checklist for making design decisions that protect the possibility of scale-up from day one. If you are an implementing partner working on an existing program, BWIM gives you a diagnostic tool, a way of identifying which of the 12 areas were not adequately addressed in the original design, and what you might be able to do now to course correct. If you are a donor or technical advisor reviewing a proposal, BWIM gives you a framework for assessing whether what is being proposed has a realistic chance of going to scale, or whether it is, from its design, a project with an expiration date. In the next episode, we go deep on recommendation 1, participatory stakeholder engagement. It is the first recommendation for a reason. The people who are not in the room when you design your pilot are the ones who will block it at scale. We will look at what genuine stakeholder engagement means in the context of scaling up, how it differs from the participation you typically see in project design processes, and what it requires of you as a program manager or implementing partner. If this episode gave you something useful, share it with a colleague who is designing or running a pilot project right now. Subscribe to the channel so you do not miss the rest of the series. And if you have a question or a case you want to discuss, leave it in the comments. I read everything. This is the ExpandNet and WHO systematic approach to scaling up, taught for practitioners. Let's keep going.